Welcome to the Partnering for Sustainability podcast. Fulfilling a future where life is on and sustainability takes top priority is simpler than you think. When we come together, join forces, and collaborate, we can achieve greatness. The time to act is now. Combined, we can realize a truly inspiring and revolutionary future.
Welcome, everybody, for the latest edition of our podcast series. I am Rohan Kelkar, the EVP for Power Products Business at Schneider Electric. And in this podcast, I am joined by Sylvain Frode de la Foret, who is our SVP for Channels at Schneider Electric, and by IDC analyst Angela Salmeron. Can you both please introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Angela Salmeron. I am a research director at IDC, part of the sustainability team, and thank you for having me.
Hello, everyone. I am Sylvain Frode de la Foret. At Schneider Electric, I'm leading our channel partners business, driving key transformations to ensure this ecosystem is fully equipped to deal with current and future stakes. Decarbonization, together with other aspects of sustainability, is one of our top priorities.
All right, welcome both of you, and let's get to it. In our last podcast episode, we talked about decarbonization, which is a focus area for us in our sustainability efforts. That is, 24% of all global GHG emissions are generated from energy consumption in industrial processes alone. In today's podcast, we want to revisit this topic, but from a very different perspective. This time, we want to bring our partners at the front and center of our decarbonization effort, because that is critical, and they may have questions such as why decarbonization, why is it good for my business, what and how can I decarbonize my business, how do I start, and then also how can Schneider Electric help? So Angela, what thoughts do you have around this?
Well, it's such a relevant topic because as an analyst, I speak with many companies across many industries, and it's often the lack of good partnerships and alignment with partners in the value chain the biggest obstacle in their decarbonization efforts. It's that shift from aspiration to action, from setting goals and a strategy to actually make it real. And it's clear that the energy crisis cannot be addressed unilaterally and in silos. It simply is very complex. To move the needle and make progress, we need partnerships, working together in a well-coordinated plan and to be effective. Don't you think, Rohan?
Yep, that's a fair point, Angela. I have an example to illustrate this from the US. So Schneider has partnered with Miller Electric, one of the biggest contractors, electrical contractors here in the United States, who recently broke ground on a new EV Innovation Design Center in Jacksonville, Florida. So why is that important? With a focus on providing tailored EV and microgrid solutions, this development center aims to alleviate the challenges faced by clients when selecting the right EV charging options and infrastructure. Because keep in mind, this is clearly a priority driven by the government, but at the same time, there are a lot of choices and options, and it's not always clear for a consumer, whether it's for personal use or for their clients from an infrastructure perspective, as to what the options are and what they really should be looking at. This is an opportunity to go live, open to all, to really look at the different options. So when you think about it, it's for public use. It's empowering clients to make decisions and really exploring different manufacturer solutions. So this is not just tied to any one particular manufacturer. It has level 2 and level 3 chargers. There is pull-through induction chargers for transit vehicles as well. So it's not just for personal vehicles, it's also fleet. They have a solar array, a backup battery that feeds into a microgrid. Of course, it's a microgrid that's designed together with Schneider Electric. And then offering a full package solutions for any customers that are either electrifying their own fleets or putting in charging for their customers or their tenants. This is allowing Americans to adopt EV and reduce what we call as range anxiety, which is most people feel a challenge to buying EV is, hey, am I going to have a challenge in terms of the range of the vehicles, which is what they struggle with when considering to make the conversion from fossil fuel cars?
It's a great example, Rohan, or your partnership with Miller Electric. And I think this is the most effective way to tackle the energy crisis. And I think action needs to be taken now because it's urgent. Just to illustrate my point, we ran a survey in IDC earlier this year to about 400 CEOs, and sustainability came out as top number one business risk. And why? Because sustainability is impacting the way companies source and manage energy, water, waste. It is material to their business and operations. And just to make things worse, CEOs are also aware and concerned that their sustainability credentials are not just and exclusively limited to their own assets, to the four walls of their buildings, to their own operations. Their sustainability actually extends to the full value chain. In actual fact, I can tell you, I had a conversation with a UK retailer a few months ago. He was actually the chief sustainability officer. And he said that their sustainability credentials are as good or as bad as their suppliers' credentials. So again, they need partners and suppliers on board, aligned with the action plan, with the journey. So in summary, right, a good partnership, good alignment, common goals, transparency and trust is needed to address sustainability and to make progress with decarbonization goals.
Okay, thank you, Angela. Sylvain, what are your thoughts?
Perfectly right, Angela. A good collaboration is clearly a key success factor here. And buildings represent a pretty fragmented domain which is involving an extensive network of value chain players, mainly comprising small and medium-sized enterprises. So, in particular for those SMEs, decarbonization can really be a daunting task, in particular if they have to drive it alone, So SMEs have limited resources, should it be in capital, in skills or technology. So how do they know that their decarbonization plans are science-based? By the way, not so many SMEs are aware of the Science Based Targets initiative and how instrumental it is for building a roadmap to net zero. How do they know their compliance? What standards should they follow and what certifications are relevant to their industry? Obviously, we hear a lot about the standards fatigue, because different standards have different objectives, different targeted audiences, like, GI, SASB, and many others. And even more important, how do they know that they're making progress? How can they gather, manage, and track the progress of their carbon data?
That's a very good point, Sylvain. Angela?
I completely agree. It is challenging, right? And even for SMBs, I'm thinking with a footprint across different geographies, having to report to different standards is cumbersome. In Europe, and probably you know this, the pressure is higher for companies, primarily because of the regulatory environment. Since January this year, and this is important, actually, January this year, but it's going to kick off next year, we have a new European sustainability regulation for reporting purposes. It's called CSRD. This is the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, right? CSRD. And with it, companies need to report their decarbonization efforts, as well as many other sustainability aspects. It's a game changer, but we know that companies are not prepared. Do you remember GDPR back in 2018, a few years ago? It was a big undertaking. No one knew how to handle it, right? And then you have this tight deadline that everyone has to comply with or face the fine. Well, I think CSRD is probably as bad or as, threatening or even worse. We know with CSRD that it is complex. There are many reasons, but one that probably our listeners want to also be aware of is that obviously you need to report your carbon emissions, but also what is called Scope 3 emissions, both upstream from your suppliers and also downstream in the life cycle. So again, I want to emphasize the importance of partnerships. They cannot be overlooked. This is in Europe. In North America, we have, I would say, a mixed picture. So in the US, which I believe they are behind us, at least in terms of reporting requirements, only publicly listed companies might, and I want to emphasize they might need to disclose their carbon footprint. At the moment, well, it was proposed by the SEC, but it needs to be approved. So again, big question mark. We don't exactly know what the US, the situation in the US. In Canada, I believe it's more advanced because I believe for decades now they have a long trajectory in environmental policies. But again, I want to come back to Europe because in Europe we have, as I mentioned earlier, CSRD is on us, is kicking off next year. And we find, this is from recent surveys conducted only a couple of months ago, many companies are in standstill. They are puzzled and they are keen. They are keen to get help and guidance. I mentioned about the survey, right? So this survey we conducted a couple of months ago, we found that 1 in 5 companies, this is 20% of large companies, are on track. This is with, they had tracked about 75% of their carbon data. But the rest, meaning 4 in 5 large companies, they were behind. They are still in early stages tracking that carbon. So this is for large companies. We know that for SMBs is even worse. The situation is even worse because they don't know where to start. So we need and they need a strategic partners with a joint commitment and alignment with those carbon targets. And that reminds me actually of a beautiful African proverb that was used by Nelson Mandela many times during his political career that said that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think this is so true in sustainability.
I'd never really thought of it that way. Sylvain, what are your thoughts?
Well, obviously there is a sense of urgency. And Schneider Electric can really be a strategic partner to go far in our mission to decarbonize our economy and fight climate change. This is what our Partnering for Sustainability is about. In fact, we are in this journey together, making available solutions for, with, and through our channel partners. Sustainability for partners to start with, assessing their carbon footprint and building a traceable plan of actions for their own operations. Sustainability with partners, certifying their ability to assess their suppliers and customers' decarbonization with easy SaaS solutions. And last but not the least, sustainability through partners, making sure our channel partners not only seize the business opportunity generated by the decarbonization journey of their own customer, but also leverage the best technologies and solutions to impact carbon footprint. Angela, you mentioned about CSRD, right? On the requirement to track Scope 3 emissions across the value chain. We know this is a huge challenge for companies with a complex value chain involving multiple suppliers and even across geographies. We want to help our channel partners, and to do so, we follow a kind of a 3 steps playbook. First, we help them strategize, setting up realistic targets in a joint commitment. Then, we digitize their sustainability plans for real-time visibility and monitoring. And third, we help them decarbonize with technologies.
And this approach with your partners makes absolute sense because it addresses many of the challenges that we see companies facing today. So companies, as I said, now they need to report their Scope 3 emissions, so it makes sense now to strategize together and have aligned metrics. On the digitize you mentioned earlier, yes, companies need to digitize their carbon data. They need to get a good view of their carbon footprint, know in terms of where they are, where they have to go, and track that progress. And you mentioned about decarbonize with technology. Definitely, our research shows that top investments in sustainability is number one, energy efficiencies in IT infrastructure and office buildings, and 2, switching to renewable energy, right? So you see the relevance. And there is, no doubt, there is an appetite for energy efficient technology in RFPs by clients. We are seeing that in our surveys, right? 2 reasons: cost savings, but also in terms of carbon targets. So if your partners can prove this, I believe their offering will stand out against competitors in any tendering process. But anyway, I'm curious about your carbon calculator, because our surveys show that carbon calculators are apparently the most impactful technology to meet sustainability goals. So this is interesting, right? And another quote comes to my mind. This one is, is attributed to Peter Drucker. And he said, "You cannot manage what you cannot measure." So tell me more.
I love that you have a quote for each of these topics, and it's actually very true. So ask and you shall receive. We've heard this exact feedback from several of our partners, and really even our employees, as we're trying to really think about Scope 3 emissions. So we've launched this carbon calculator. It is called Zygo Activate, which basically responds to the 3 most common questions, like Sylvain said, that fall into the 3 strategic priorities the way we approach this, which is, do you know what your footprint is for your existing business? So what's your baseline? Do you actually have a tangible plan to reduce that footprint? And then, do you know how that plan is going versus your assumptions? So really, to rephrase what you just said, is what gets measured gets done. And Zygo Activate provides a framework to really capture and do that. Now, it's more than tracking and monitoring, because we use it quite early in our own strategy session with partners as we try to set up a decarbonization roadmap. It is customized for them and contextualized in their regional marketplace, so it is not a one-size-fits-all. And the tool has a dashboard with a view of monthly emissions and carbon metrics that, frankly, really matter. So to me, we are starting to make significant progress in this direction.
And it's interesting to hear that your carbon tool goes beyond purely tracking. It also helps partners know in their net zero roadmap. However, and this is my thinking now, I'm sure that net zero roadmap might feel sometimes a mission impossible, right? So my question to you is, how are you helping your partners and their customers to move away from fossil fuels? How you help them to drive energy efficiency? How you help them with sustainable procurement? Our research suggests that there is a strong appetite for IT equipment that is easy to repair, recycle, reuse. I love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, sure. You're alluding to the goals that are embedded in our 4 levers for decarbonization, which is electrify your operations, reduce energy use, replace resources, and engage your value chain. And we've been on this journey ourselves, right? For example, we launched a project that recently concluded with our top 1,000 suppliers, think about it, that really said, hey, how can we work with you and our sustainability business to help you find the right source of renewable energy, right? You start from the beginning, which is your source of power. Do we have a way to optimize, by the way, your cost of production, your cost of electricity, but at the same time, swap that source into a cleaner energy source? It starts with that. Second is thinking about, smart buildings. Again, goes back to what gets measured gets done. Is, do we have the right sensors? Can you have occupancy sensors, which will automatically switch on and off and optimize your electricity consumption? Microgrid solutions, where you can have DERs and you can really switch and optimize peak shaving strategies, things like that. So really all of these coming together is a way that we can try to make it practical both for ourselves and really help our partners, depending on where they are in their journey, some of them just starting, and then some of them really well along their journey, like we just talked about Miller and some of the others, to help them and in fact, in some cases, learn from them and share it with the broader ecosystem.
Okay, that's very interesting. The business case for sustainability is an area actually close to my heart. Remember what I mentioned earlier, sustainability being the top risk to European companies, according to CEOs. So obviously, to address sustainability is going to require significant investment, right, to be resilient in the face of climate change. But my question is sustainability only a risk management issue? Do we think that sustainability can be also a business advantage? So we are seeing, and this is, I'm going to start first with external parties. There are studies out there, and actually well-established think tanks, that show that looking after the planet does not compromise profits, right? This is third parties. In IDC, our research shows that actually the business impact of sustainability is broad across many stakeholders. Investing in sustainability benefits customers, employees, partners, regulators, right? You need to comply with regulations, and of course, stakeholders as well. I can also share with you that back in March, IDC hosted a conference to the C-level, right? We have a C-level audience in the room. And we learned a few things from that conference. We learned that sustainable companies actually enjoy good branding, right? And good branding is good in terms of attracting good talent, but also creates loyal customers. We also learned that sustainable companies have greater chances to enter tenders and stand out against competitors, and also greater chances as well to access capital or to cheaper capital, right? And insurance, which is important. And I think conclusion is that the bottom line improves. And as you pointed out earlier, right, is energy efficiency, but also a good asset life cycle management can derive significant cost savings. So again, it's good for the business. And this is so far, right? We know that there is more. It's all this new development, driven by sustainability that we haven't seen yet. So, they say, and again, not to speak with my science, that necessity is the mother of invention. So, I remain positive that saving the planet will lead to technology disruption and many, many new opportunities. So, Sylvain, what do you think is the business case for sustainability according to Schneider Electric?
Well, our vision is to make decarbonization a clear business opportunity for our partners. A significant portion of them has already started to do so for their own operation, by the way. As an example, implementing microgrids on their own facilities with multi-source management, including renewables, to tackle carbon, efficiency, and I mean cost here, and resiliency challenges, all at the same time. Anyway, Schneider Electric is willing to help partners measure the business impact on the return on investments of their sustainability plan, backed by facts and figures. On top, we also have clear evidences that partners can demonstrate and articulate their commitment to sustainability, improving their sustainability profile with simplified, digital, and open Schneider Electric solutions in their operations, are seen more favorably by customers, but also by talents looking for their next job. For us, this is a clear win-win engagement.
So true, Sylvain. I really like that idea.
I totally agree. It's so good to learn about your partnership approach in your sustainability strategy. And I have two questions. The first one is, for those who have not started the journey, what could be a good first step? And number two is, for those who have started, what can they do next? How can they advance in their journey?
First, for the partners that are just starting their journey, I'll come up with a quote and say, Rome wasn't built in a day, but you got to start somewhere. We have a sustainability school for partners, which will be a good place to start. So Chapter 1 has been launched in April this year. The courses give a clear understanding on sustainability basics like climate science, scope of impact, tracking metrics, and why it is paramount that your business leverage this knowledge. So it's a very practical guide. Think of it like a 101. Chapter 2 will be launched in October, and the courses will explain how to develop a decarbonization plan while leveraging tools and technology like Zygo Activate that I just mentioned earlier. Now, for the advanced partners, they could be interested in our Sustainability Impact Award. So really what we see here is it's not a one-way conversation. In fact, and we talked about the example from Miller, but there are many others globally where our partners are well on the journey and we can learn from them both as Schneider Electric and also as partners in this ecosystem or other partners. So really, the way to do this is to drive it'll be our second edition of this, which is our Sustainability Impact Awards, and really get recognized and get the visibility with the entire ecosystem on great things that are being done so we can all learn from each other. So wrapping up, we would love to hear about your journey and we want to be part of it. With this, I'd like to thank our guest speakers, Angela and Sylvain. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Rohan.
My pleasure, Rohan.
And then all our listeners that have tuned in to this podcast and this episode of Partnering for Sustainability series. Tune in for our next episode next month with some new experts, and we will talk to you soon.
This has been our Partnering for Sustainability podcast, brought to you by Schneider Electric. If you enjoyed this episode, you can listen to more, subscribe, and leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. The content of this podcast is for information purposes only and should not be undertaken as financial, economic, legal, business, tax, or investment advice. The information, statements, views, and opinions should not be construed as the provision of advice by Schneider Electric, or as an offer to buy or sell any products or services, or to make or consider any investment or course of action.